Hey, what's going on, y'all? You found your way to the Find the Others podcast. This is a conversation with my good buddy, Gary Lee Haskins. Gary has a podcast of his own called The Conscious Perspective, where he talks to people from all walks of life, but he really does have a focus on spiritual seekers, people that are very committed to meditation and spiritual practices. So one of the things that we talk about is like what kind of wisdom that he's gained from talking to people like this all the time. And then we talk about all of our other shared interests like psychedelics, the history of that. I see Gary as someone who kind of follows the thread of Ram Dass, which is a very common teacher for people that get into psychedelics through his seminal book, Be Here Now. So we'll talk about all of that, about surrender, intuition, and psychedelics as a potential path or preview to enlightenment. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around for this conversation with Gary Lee Haskins.
I'm good to go.
All right, cool. Me too, man.
Nice to see you, though.
Yeah, you too, man. It's been a long time coming because I've been on your channel like twice, I think. And I always really enjoy our conversations because I feel like I'm going to want to get into your backstory with this, like why you started talking about this, but just want to point out to people that might be listening that I feel like your path follows a very interesting lineage, which is connected to like the actual spiritual Eastern side of like the psychedelic world, which I feel like it's branched off into so many little subgroups and categories, but I feel like the path that you're kind of on follows something that's been since the 60s, you know, with people like Ram Dass and stuff. So I want to hear how you like got into this world, like how you started your channel, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Cool. Well, interestingly enough, I got into it from reading about the history of the 60s, which I think we spoke on last conversation. It was a book called Acid Dreams, and it was just all about the craziness of the 60s. And I wasn't even interested in yoga, Ram Dass, psychedelics, Tim Leary. I just was into history. And from the curiosity of history, I was just like, who are these characters of Richard Alpert and Tim Leary? They just seemed like characters in a movie, which I'm surprised no one has made a movie of them, to be honest with you. But yeah, just from curiosity into what the heck was going on in the 60s, that led me down into curiosity of what yoga was, what meditation was, who Ram Dass was, and that's pretty much it, man. And it's funny because you say that it started in the 60s, but really, true yoga started thousands of years ago. And that's why I'm so into it. Again, touching upon history is because it's the oldest religion that we have. It's the oldest written down religion that we have, at least, the Vedas. So again, just being a student of history led me down into the path of yoga and yogic philosophy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I was saying it, like, it started from the 60s, I was thinking in my head the exact same thing. I'm like, well, the actual thing goes way, 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 way back. And what's cool about that is that a lot of people's psychedelic experiences can only be explained kind of in those yogic and sometimes Hindu, sometimes like Buddhist terms. It's like they created a vocabulary that we can borrow from, which can be kind of like problematic, you know, when we're like maybe borrowing a worldview that doesn't exactly fit in with ours. Like, I mean, there's some problems with that. I'm not saying just like in general, I'm not trying to paint too broad of a stroke, but yeah, for example, like most people can't really live like a true monk lifestyle while actually living in America. I think it's somewhat possible, but that's why people always leave. Like I just talked to this girl Acacia, and she's giving up her life as like a psychedelic, like psychonaut teacher, and going to India to study to become a monk. And that seems like what it always entails is like going somewhere. Whereas maybe in the past, it was like you had your little village and you could just go off to the mountains to kind of pursue that hermit like
Yeah.
lifestyle. So I don't know. That's just, what do you think about that? Like, how does it mesh with the way society is now? Has it gotten even harder?
It's a very good topic. A lot of people think everyone who is a Buddhist has to become a monk. It's actually not that way. If you read the Buddhist teachings, he writes it almost specifically for lay people. Monks are just the purveyors of the knowledge, but who the knowledge is bestowed upon is the regular people, is the lay people. So it's contrary to popular belief, popular Western belief, that you have to don the robes and shave your head. It's not like that at all. If anything, it'll help your lay life so much more. And that's what I use it for. That's what I utilize the teachings of yoga and the Buddha for. It's to become monk-like. It's to simplify. You don't have to go and live in a cave or do anything that monks do, but you can definitely learn from the monk lifestyle. And that will help so much. And it really just comes down to simplicity. If you really want to generalize it in some way, it's just simplify your life. That's what a monk is. They are regimented, ritualistic, you could say, and extremely simplified in their lifestyle. So I take that essence of the Buddhist teachings, the great simplification of the Eightfold Path, and incorporate that into my lay life. And some people do take it a step further and they go to the monastery. I don't think you need to do that, to be honest with you. In 2025, and this is going on a whole other topic, but I don't think if you want to get enlightened, you have to become a monk. Back in the day, you had to. You had to go find a teacher. You had to have this very stern, I guess you could say, lifestyle in Buddhist teachings, because where else are you going to find it? You have to go to the monastery. You know what I mean? You have to get, what's the word? Ordained. You have to get ordained, because if not, then you have no exposure to any of the teachings of the sages. But now we have Google. So you don't actually need to do any of that stuff. You can read the Upanishads. You can read the Gita. You can read Buddha's sutras or suttas from your living room. So I guess answering your question is, you can, if you want, you can become an ascetic, but you don't have to. You really don't have to.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, and when I was talking to Acacia last week, I kept brushing up against all of these, like, not like stereotypes in my head, but like kind of falsehoods, about like, do you need to go be a monk in order to pursue this kind of spiritual path? And like, it wasn't like I was coming with any kind of like overarching beliefs, but there's just these little things in our head because we're living over here in the West and we don't always fully understand what it's all about. So I hope, even in my misunderstanding, I hope talking to someone like you about it, it can help illuminate for other people who might have this kind of fuzzy idea. Because that's what it is to me. It's like a fuzzy idea, as opposed to like, I know what this is. It's just like, monk, mountain, meditation.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think monks are for? What is the purpose for a person to become a monk, and what purpose do you think monks serve to regular people?
That's a really interesting question, because it almost seems maybe not selfish in a way, but it seems isolated. It's devotional in a sense, like, but I don't necessarily know how it serves a community unless they're like teaching. But
That's the main purpose right there,
yeah,
is they teach. They're the ones that hold the knowledge. Especially back in the day, like I said before, the internet, they were the ones that held this knowledge sacred. So think about a Buddha. This might illuminate something for you. Every Buddhist monk you see is like a chain link, probably hundreds of chain links to the Buddha. So the Buddha initiated his first disciples, and then his disciples initiated their disciples, and then so forth. So it's a way to preserve the knowledge, to keep it pure, right? It's like, how do I put this? Yeah, it's just keeping it pure. It's just like keeping it so that it's untainted by the ego, by man. And that's the main, I feel, value of monks is teaching and also preserving the teachings.
Hmm. So then, do you feel like when a monk or somebody goes off in isolation, that's never a permanent thing? You think it's like the isolation is in the big picture to serve, to come back and teach what they've learned, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
insights they've gleaned? Is
Yep.
there such thing as someone who just like goes off forever and they just keep it all to themselves?
Probably.
Yeah.
But I would argue that's not the highest form of enlightenment. Because think about the story of the Buddha. What did he do? He literally went in the woods, sat under the Bodhi tree, got enlightened, and he didn't just stay out there. He came back into the kingdom to teach. So I believe that's the blueprint for all or most people that are seeking enlightenment per se. It's you go and realize some things, and then from those realizations you kind of spread the good word. You give back a little. You give back what you learned, you know? And I think we can all relate to that point of solitude, that point of going into the cave. It might be a metaphor, but I believe that all of us that are on this path share that same essence of finding a little bit of solitude, a little bit of
Hmm.
meditation.
That's true, because that's where I guess the noise is reduced enough to kind of get closer to the essence of things. Yeah, it's like turning off the noise. Yeah. And you've, with your channel, I mentioned like this is kind of your path. It's a very specific, like psychedelic spiritual path. And there's a few things that have popped into my mind. Maybe we can jump from one to another. One is that the relationship that psychedelics have to this idea of enlightenment, which I've done a 180 and then a 360 on like how I feel about this thing. But I think the general idea that I've come to is that psychedelics are like the they can be like the movie trailer to enlightenment, at least show you that like some kind of thing like that is possible, but it's the
Yeah.
meditation and the regimen that will actually like get you to keep it there. So that's one thing, so we can go down that road. And then another thing is just the fact that you and what you do is talking to so many of these people. So I'd love to get into like some of the things you've learned or some kind of patterns you see, because I see you talking to people that are donned with like the robes and like
Yep.
the Sanskrit lettering and like some serious like peeps. So
Yeah.
let's go down the psychedelic enlightenment path. So I want to start with have you ever experienced something that you feel is close to enlightenment, even if for just a moment, having to do with psychedelics or even meditation, and like your thoughts on like psychedelics, enlightenment, and that kind of seeking towards that end.
Hmm. That's a big question. I believe the greatest thing that psychedelics have granted me is showing me what's possible, as you said, showing me the movie trailer and breaking me out of the matrix, out of the conditioned mind to illuminate a different way of living, a different way of seeing myself, no self, maybe, as the Buddhists would say, and following that, knowing that that is the truth. Above all else, above all the materialistic pursuits and desires that the world wants to grant you, psychedelics show you something that is not of this world. As Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. And that is exactly what the mushroom showed me. A, just a different vibration, a different frequency to live on. And it's not necessarily like you go into a different dimension, you might, but it's like from those insights, how do you come back into the play of your life and live on that frequency? Like you embody that frequency that all of the sages have embodied. So I think, yeah, psychedelics are like a preview for you. They allow you to get a little bit of a taste into this frequency to show you what's possible outside of the materialistic paradigm. And you can either go with it or not. And it doesn't work on everybody. As Terence McKenna says, he says something like psychedelics don't work on stupid people.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It might be a little bit crude way to say it, but it's kind of true. It's like if it was made for you, then they'll work. But if not, then it's just going to be like another drug experience. There's some people, like Ram Dass specifically, where it just works. You get the message, and then you don't really need them anymore, too. That's the thing. You can do it once, twice, 3 times, maybe, and you get the message, and then you follow the path. If you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the things that points to is like there's a similar revelation that happens with psychedelics and these deep spiritual insights, which has to do with kind of the dispelling of illusion, where it's like we're drinking the Kool-Aid of our day-to-day reality and thinking that this is it. Which reminds me of the Alan Watts book that I have. It's called This Is It. And he's another great teacher that we can get into that I think was a great, he does a good job of kind of putting these ideas in plain English. So yeah, I think the illusory nature of our day-to-day reality is like the thing that's common. So I wonder, this is just kind of getting into speculation now. Like, I wonder what it is about psychedelics that only make it a preview. Maybe it's because it can temporarily decondition the mind in the way that lends itself to these states of insights. Mm-hmm. And then that in order to do that same deconditioning on a baseline level, we have to like really, really dig it out. Where it's like maybe you can think of it as like let's say that your mind is some kind of sidewalk, and then psychedelics are like getting a power washer and just like spraying it, but then once it's done, the kind of dirt like settles back down. Yeah. Whereas if you were to actually like meditate and do it, raw, then that would actually go in and like dust, making all these little tiny movements to like dust it off. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but I wonder what the difference in psychedelics versus this other path is.
Well, I think it's all the same path. And to answer that question, really what the path is about is reconditioning our mind, like rewiring your brain, neurogenesis, right? And I talked to this guy one time who was a psychologist, and he was into brain chemistry and things of that nature, who explained to me very basically what, I think we were talking about ketamine actually, but I believe they all share the same characteristic. What psychedelics do are shut down the part of your brain, I forget the name of it, something like GABA something, I'm not even going to try and remember it, but it shuts down the part of your brain that is responsible for your ego. And that's what the path is all about, is becoming a little less selfish, rewiring your brain to realize that you're not a separate entity here, is that we are all interconnected. And in a psychedelic session, it shuts that off really quick. Like you just feel it. It's so apparent that it's that we're all connected, and that's because of the chemical induction of whatever the molecule is to just completely shut it down. So yeah, you can do it through a DMT session or psilocybin session, and it'll work, but it does inevitably come back because it's not natural. Like you didn't do that on your own terms. You did that because of some kind of non-endogenous chemical coming into your body. So I think it shows you that preview, but you ultimately have to do that yourself, so that like working a muscle, like you can take steroids, but ultimately that's like fake muscle. You have to build it. If you stop taking the steroids, you get unjacked really quick, so you have to do it naturally.
Unjacked.
Yeah, so you gotta jack yourself up in a natural way, which just really comes down to changing your brain chemistry, not even your chemistry, like how the neurons fire. in a natural way so that it stays and it sticks, so or it stays clean, as you said. So that's what it shows you. Because what is the illusion that we spoke of, that it jumps us out of, is the illusion of your sense of separate self, that you're just like an isolate suffering being here, and that woe is me attitude. And what we how we come out of the illusion is recognition that it's all one, man. It's all one, that we're all in this together. We've all heard that before, but it's truly like reorientating and recalibrating, restructuring the brain to reside in that at all times. That's the path. It's very scientific. That's what's curious to me too, is like what was woo maybe in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s is now coming to light in a realistic manner. Like we can actually see the brain differences from these practices, and it's legitimate. It's not all like magic and fairy tales. Like you actually can see the power of meditation, and that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know, seeing is believing.
Yeah.
So if we see the difference through scientific literature, then I think it gives us a little more gumption in our way of living. If you want, like I said, if you want to look at the science, you can become a believer and actually tread the path if you want to.
Yeah. No, that definitely resonates. Whenever you brought up the point of the connectivity being a part of this, it was like a bell went off in my brain. It's like ding, ding, ding. Like, yes, that rings as true. And I believe the part of the brain that you were referring to earlier is the default mode network. That's like where the ego supposedly resides. But that brings up a whole interesting point of like the connectivity being a key part of this recognition. Because, you know, one of the things they study with these like brain waves, these brain scans on monks, is they'll do like a compassion meditation. And that's like a huge thing, you know, like, so if we are connected, the reaction to that should naturally be compassion. So it's like what Alan Watts said, I think, once, where he was like, anytime we're hurting the planet or someone else, it's like we're hitting ourselves with a hammer in the head. Like, and once you realize we are the same thing, you would stop hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. And I feel like compassion is the best reaction possible to that. But I think that's really hard for a lot of people because, especially in America, it's a very individualist culture. And actually, that's kind of like maybe not the stereotype, but the general orientation of like Eastern Asian cultures is that they put the collective over the individual. And I think, yeah, it's like even in an individualistic society like what we have, there's certain bounds of that individualism, right? Where it's like you can do whatever you want unless it hurts someone else. So it's like even in an individualist society, it hits a wall at a certain point where it affects the collective. So yeah, I think, have you ever seen those like brain scans where there's monks doing like compassion meditations? Have you ever talked to anybody that does some kind of compassion meditation like that?
Passion meditation? Yeah, I mean, I could say all meditation is compassion meditation.
Interesting.
But you mean like actually conducting the science experiments? I have talked to a few.
Okay, no, the science experiments made me think of like what I read about that, where it was like they were meditating on this idea of compassion.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So just
you
that
saw
kind of
the
meditation.
little difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what it's all about, man. It's all about love. I didn't want to say it, but I said it. But yeah, it's real. That's the thing. I think what science is providing us is showing us that all of this is real. All of this is real and also very what's the word when something is like anybody can do it. You know, you don't have to be a monk. Anybody can meditate on compassion, and that's the beautiful thing.
Hmm.
to change your life and to change, I mean, the world, if you really want to go that grandiose.
Yeah. And I feel like there's practical like personal benefits to practicing compassion in your day-to-day life. Like for example, road rage. One of the things that I try to remind myself is like if someone's speeding and cuts me off, I'm like maybe they're on their way to the hospital. Most likely not,
Yeah.
but it's like if that was the case, I would have been getting angry just because I was lacking some information.
Mm.
And I think it's for that reason it's good to like by default have compassion for someone, especially like in the world of maybe like online haters or something like that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
easy to get riled up. I'm not saying I'm like some perfect saint about this, but sometimes when people are like saying stuff that's so ridiculous that I'm like, oh, this is, you're like hurting inside, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can tell that it's something within. So I almost like start to feel bad for them. And like,
Yeah.
I try to offer compassion. I'm like, cause something's up with you. And it's like, you're just kind of projecting that out onto everyone else. And,
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of anger could be avoided by us just kind of defaulting to compassion. Like I
Amen.
said, easier said than done. I don't think we're always perfect, but it's like a north star to at least like aim for, at the
Oh,
very
yeah.
least.
For sure. Just try it out. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you wake up in the morning, try it. Might not work, but just try loving everybody. When you
Mm-hmm.
open your eyes, say, you know what? I'm going to love everybody today. I mean, it's funny because the universe will throw you a test. At least it does for me. If I, attempt to be the holy man, someone will cut me off in traffic. I'm like, that mother, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I got some work to do. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, try it, but also have enough humility to know that you're not perfect either.
Yeah.
So it's a
That's the key.
balancing act.
Yeah, it always is a balance, man. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like there's this whole thing where people see the movie trailer in psychedelics, especially if you're kind of younger, like a lot of us are when we start, and
Yeah.
you think you got it all figured out just because you like gleamed something, and then they don't have the humility to recognize that they're not all the way there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
some of the people that I know as like they're like angelic in one way, but their shadow is like gnarly,
Mm.
because they're not uh dealing with it. It's like this like cancerous thing that it's like, yeah, there is the light there, but if you don't like illuminate that shadow, it's just like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some stuff, man, like there's a lot of undealt with things because people think that they are better than that, or they don't have the humility to recognize that
Yeah.
they're still not all the way there.
Well said. There's nothing worse than a spiritual ego.
Hmm. Yeah. That's why there's all these like meme pages about that now, like Bali retreat
Yeah.
like characters and
Uh-huh.
all of this stuff, like activate your divine goddess for 20K type of thing.
Yeah, right. It's a balancing act, man. As we said, it's the true middle way. The path is balancing multiple aspects of our being, the two poles of our being. The angelic side, the spiritual side, you could say, but also the human side. We have both. And if you attach yourself to either one too much, you're going to suffer. And then
Mm,
ultimately, other people are going to suffer. You can't be fake holy. And you
mm,
also can't be an extreme hedonist either. There's somewhere in the middle for all of us. And that is the true middle way, especially in the Western world. If you're spiritual and you live in the Western world, you can't be fake holy. That's not going to work.
mm-hmm.
You have to recognize both aspects of our being.
That's
That's
great.
tough,
Yeah.
right? Because the mind wants to be like, I am this. I am whatever it is, whatever comes. I am X, Y, or Z. And this is who I'm going to be. Like, nope. That's just another attachment. I like to say you can't be too attached to being unattached.
Mm, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people could use that too once they start getting into this stuff. And I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest evolutions for me has to do with this. It has to do with being able to hold a contradiction in my
Yeah.
mind where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm this, but I'm also this. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I'm I think you could just keep iterating on that idea over and over again. And I think that something about the way our mind works, we want things to be black and white,
Yep.
like, and the middle way is gray.
That leads me to the part in Be Here Now. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this is a perfect segue. If you allow
Yeah,
me to read
sweet.
it, man. It's on
Sweet.
page 30
Yes.
if you want to open up, or anybody listening wants to open up to page 30 of Be Here Now.
Sweet.
It's perfect.
Yeah, nice.
All right. So here we go. The only way out of that, which is it's referring to the previous page, but the only way out of that is to take the poles of every set of opposites and see the way in which they are one. And if you can get into that place where you see the interrelatedness of everything, you see the oneness in it all. No longer you are no longer are you attached to your polarized position. The whole thing is about the whole thing about generation gaps is a hype. The spirit is the spirit. When you can center and see your whole life as a story in which the chapters are unfolding. The moment to moment involvement, am I getting enough at this moment? Ceases to be the dominant theme. You start to live in the Tao, the way. And Jesus said, I am the way. It's the same way. The way is the way is the way. So we touched upon that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's when you don't get involved in any of the stories of I am this or I shouldn't be that. The way is quantum in some way. It's like the third way. You are both. You are both and neither of the opposites. And that is fluid. And that is the way of the sage.
Mm, that's powerful, man.
All right.
Let's talk about that book. By the way, can you open back up to the page and show me what it looks like? Because
Yeah.
if no one's ever seen Be Here Now, it's not a conventionally laid out book.
No. And it's a little hard to read. That's why
Yeah.
I was like squinting a little bit because the
Yeah.
some of the illustrations get
Right.
into it. It's beautiful. It's a work of art. It's almost
Yes.
like I compare it to something like the Bible because it's just how it's written. It's just like the first time I read Be Here Now, it was like a psychedelic experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've never read words that hit so hard as Be Here Now, and I think anybody that reads it can attest to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the other page that we had, or that I referenced, was page 20, which is also pretty cool. Maybe we can read that. I don't know if it relates. It doesn't really relate to the topic of yin and yang, but I'll
That's
show
all
you the
right.
picture.
Yeah, that's all right.
This is a picture. Might have to blur that one out.
Oh, they're mushrooms.
Yeah, exactly. They're mushrooms. Yeah, the whole thing is just art. But this is Jesus. Look
Mm.
at that on both pages. And this
Mm-hmm.
was made in the 70s, 60s. So it's like, how did they create something like this before?
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can I read this one? I might as well.
Yes,
It
please.
doesn't really relate to
Let's
that
just
much. I
go
mean,
for
it
it.
all relates in one way or the other, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Surrender. What are you giving up? A hollow little trip that's good for another 40 years at best? You're giving it up for eternal union with the pure energy in pure light. Because surrender means you no longer die. It's as simple as that. That's what it means. Because you that lives and dies is you. It's ego. And fear of death only comes through the brittleness of the ego. Total surrender. Total surrender. There's no more you. There's no more life and death. Yeah, I'm going to die. Wow, dig that. I'm going to live. Wow, dig that. Garbage. Wow, new blossoms on the tree. Wow, patterns of energy. All patterns of energy. You're part of it all. That's the place. That's the place.
Hmm.
Yeah, man. It just comes through surrender.
Yeah. How how have you dealt with actually implementing that? Because it's one thing. It's almost hard to just like force it by will. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
it's
you
like
can't
you
force
can't,
surrender. It
right,
doesn't
you
make any
can't
sense.
just, yeah, it's like the opposite actually. It's a paradox.
Isn't that interesting? You say, I
Yeah.
am going to surrender. It's almost like you already lost the game.
Right. Right.
And that's why it doesn't come through the mind. It comes through meditative practice. It comes through silencing the mind. And then naturally surrender comes forth from that. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be the surrenderer, you already lost. You
Mm.
have to just practice no mind. As Ram Dass said, no mind. There is no more you, no more life. There is like, this sounds like nihilistic in a way and very negative, but you have to, and even just my words are contradictory because I'm saying you have to, but in a way, you do have to get to a place of no mind in order to truly internalize what surrender means and then bring that no-mindedness into the world. And no mind doesn't mean like passiveness. It doesn't mean stupidity or naivety. It means the ego mind, the sense of separate self of who you think you should be or who they should be, or the countless stories doesn't get in the way. And there's a play on words. It doesn't get in the way.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? There is a higher intelligence, a higher form of processing the world, a higher way of living. Intuition, that I like to say. I think
Mm-hmm.
intuition and surrender, they're very synonymous. So it's just about getting out of your own way to follow the way with a capital T and a
Yeah.
capital W.
Yeah. I like that. There's almost like it's almost like a flow state.
Yeah,
It's a
man.
type of passive flow state. That's one of the things that I noticed with my visionary experiences is sometimes I'll be meditating and smoking cannabis and or like smoking and then meditating. Not just like I'm in the lotus pose and like
It's actually
uh
very powerful, though.
yes.
Cannabis and meditation, highly recommend.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's been huge for me. And one of the things that I like to point out is that this Kundalini meditation that I do, it's about active imagination where you're doing like a body scan and you go through each chakra point and you're kind of like physically relaxing the muscles in that area. And
Mm.
there's something about creating that still container that allows for really magical things to happen.
Yeah.
So it's this active this almost me deliberating, me using my willpower to actively imagine something, but then sometimes something clicks and it becomes like a movie I'm witness to. So
Mm.
there's this shift where it becomes me like, oh yes, let me imagine this chakra and like imagine this energy of light swirling around. But then sometimes it'll take over and now I'm just watching and it turns into this like visionary experience.
Yeah.
And there's something I think in there about flow and surrender. It's
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in this absolutely still state, which I would recommend to people too, like psychedelic experiences, meditation. There's something very key about stilling the waters,
Mm.
almost as if like let's say you're like some kind of fortune teller person and you have this like magical bowl of holy water that reflects visions to you. You want to make sure the water is perfectly still to
Yeah.
be able to like experience the visions.
The
Um,
reflection.
so there's something in there that I think is related to this though, where it's like something clicks, where it's like at first it was my willpower, but then I am able to get out of the way because I'm in this meditative state and it enters into this kind of flow,
Mm-hmm.
which I think, yeah, part of the surrender is and when I think of flow, you can almost imagine it as like, let's say there's this current of the universe, these higher forces that we are speaking of, and flow is allowing yourself to be like swept by them
Yeah.
and dancing along with it.
Yeah.
And I think a day-to-day experience of surrendering is music. If you've ever
Yeah.
been in a situation where music's playing and it makes you want to dance, that's a kind of surrender. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Oh, for sure.
it's allowing it to subsume you, allowing the current to move through you. Oh, and you brought up a good point too, where like the surrender has to do with detaching yourself from the thoughts. And there's something about this meditative state, and maybe that's where like these tools come in, is like psychedelics and music. They're able to give you something to detach from your thoughts. Like it's giving you something else to kind of tune into.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a different way of tuning
Mm.
the instrument of our body.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Powerful stuff, man. Yeah, it just comes down to intuition. Like, intuition leads the way. And
Yeah.
you just got to get out of your own way. And then you can dance.
Yeah.
And then you can dance.
Yeah. And it becomes so powerful to learn to trust your intuition. Because I feel like it's way smarter than our egoic thinking minds.
Yeah.
You know,
I have
like,
a passage on intuition that I think is the best explanation of
sweet.
intuition.
Let's
This is
hear
from The Life Divine by Sri Aurobindo. Hold on, let me find it really quick.
Okay, take your time, man.
Okay, I got it. I was on the wrong page. But yeah, I highly recommend this book. This guy is one of my top sages. Kind of intensive. You really have to pay attention to every word, but he's got it figured out. He's one of the best writers of the Dharma, I believe. But I think this is one of the best explanations of intuition that I have heard. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's hear it.
For if we examine carefully, we shall find that intuition is our first teacher. That's good, right? It's our first teacher.
I like that.
Intuition always stands veiled behind our mental operations. Intuition brings to man those brilliant messages from the unknown, which are the beginning of his higher knowledge. Reason only comes in afterwards to see what profit it can have of the shining harvest. Intuition gives us that idea of something behind and beyond all that we know and seem to be, which pursues man always in contradiction of his lower reason and all his normal experience, and impels him to formulate that formless perception in the more positive ideas of God, immortality, heaven, and the rest, by which we strive to express it to the mind. For intuition is as strong as nature herself, from whose very soul it has sprung, and cares nothing for the contradictions of reason or the denials of experience. It knows what is because it is. That's good, right? It knows what is because it is. Because itself, it is of that and has come from that, and will not yield it to the judgment of what merely becomes and appears. What the intuition tells us of is not so much existence as the existent, for it proceeds from that one point of light in us which gives it its advantage, that sometimes open door in our own self-awareness. Ancient Vedanta seized this message of intuition and formulated it in the three great declarations of the Upanishads. Quote, I am he, thou art that, O Swetakatu. All this is the Brahman, this self is the Brahman. I'll wrap it up at that. But I think that is like a perfect formulation and summary of what intuition is. It's the existent, not the existence, and our first teacher.
That's fascinating. I love the idea of intuition being almost like our connection to nature. I've never heard it put that way, but that's fascinating. Because yeah, it does seem like this outer layer, maybe that's the prefrontal cortex or the default mode network. It seems like a later addition in our like evolutionary, stack of like, we got the limbic system, we got the lizard brain, we got intuition, and because I feel like animals have intuition, right? Like cats, animals that like, they don't know what's going on with the weather, but they know when to like get the hell out. So like, I think that's so interesting. I've never made that connection. And something else that it kind of reminds me of is like imagination. I think I wonder how much you could connect intuition and imagination, because oftentimes I feel like the imagination, and Terence McKenna was a big proponent of this, the imagination is like a medium for a lot of these revelations. You might have some kind of visual where you're like, oh, I imagine myself as this drop of water in the ocean, and it helped me kind of form this idea about enlightenment. And it was like you were imagining that, but it was like a medium for you to understand something that your intuition was doing. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I wonder, yeah,
Mm.
just like where the intuition and the imagination come into play there.
Hmm. That's tough to say. I think they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say they're both not really attached to the thinking mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're like different senses in the mind, it seems. I think they are separate. Like intuition and imagination are separate parts of the being that I can feel, at least right now. But they're most importantly is they're separate from logic in some kind of way.
Yeah.
They're separate from the ego mind. They're both a higher form of processing the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
and
ever heard the stat where some people don't have imagination? Like they don't have
there no
visualizations in their
visual.
brain?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild. That really is.
Like a good percentage of people.
Yeah, is it really?
Yeah, it's like it's not rare.
Yeah.
I think that's
Dang.
so peculiar. Maybe they're just not tapped in. I believe all of us have these innate abilities. You just got to be able to tap in.
Hmm.
You have to free it in some kind of way from the conditioning. And it's just a matter of doing the practices and finding the right mushrooms.
Yeah, because I don't know about like the active visual imagination, but I do feel like I activated like synesthesia, where
Yeah.
you experience the crossing of the senses, and like so whenever I hear music, I think of colors and like
Mm.
textures and stuff. I know some people that actually have it like for real synesthesia, and it's like so distinct. And I'm always curious. I have this friend that I'll show her like songs from my band, and I'm like, what do you see? You know, I'm so curious. Like, and she'll be like, oh yeah, it's like pink clouds, and like she'll say all this very specific stuff. For me, it's more like vague. I'm like, I could kind of get an orange from this, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But I definitely think that psychedelics like activated that. So that's an example of us being able to like tap into some innate thing that we were previously not in tune with.
Mm-hmm.
What have you had any kind of moments like where you unlock some new feature, some new software of the brain?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, nothing like synesthesia though.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think it just enhanced imagination
Yeah,
and the power of imagination.
for sure.
Let me try. I can't think of anything specifically, like any specific moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, but it
One
definitely has. I
Yeah,
feel
I'm
a difference.
sure it would come. Yeah, it might be some really subtle thing too. I think the
Mm-hmm.
imagination is a good thing too. Yeah, it can really open you up. Even just like deconditioning your biases,
Yeah.
like I don't know if you've seen this, but like now Oprah is like pro psychedelics.
Wow. Shout out
And
Oprah.
there's a lot of like if you look at the comments, which is almost always a bad idea to look at the comments.
Yeah.
People are like, "No thanks, we don't want her." But I
What?
think it's a good case study. I think it's cuz she's kind of considered like an elite, and she
Yeah.
was also very anti psychedelic and like pushed some of the like false claims of like MDMA or like that people would jump out of a building. So people are like less willing to forgive her for that, but I think
Mm.
we should allow people to grow and change. I'm a big proponent of that, and it's like it's whatever, it's just one person.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a celebrity, but anyway, I think that the point I was trying to say is that she was able to get rid of her biases through something changed her way of thinking, and I think that's valuable even at the smallest scale, even if it's
Probably ate
like,
some mushrooms.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
'Cause that's all you got to do to become a believer. Is you just take the psychedelic.
Right.
The
Unless
biggest
you're a
critics are
stupid
the
person.
people. Yeah, that's true. But even then, it'll still have some kind of effect on you. Even if
Yeah.
you don't become Ram Dass, it'll still have some kind of effect to show you that they're
Right.
harmless, essentially. Because that's
Right.
the thing is they're so demonized. They're
Mhm.
scheduled what 1, 2, or 3, whatever it is. They're scheduled to become a felony if you're found in
Mhm.
possession of them, which is, I believe, a crime against humanity.
Yes.
Because they are harmless. Literally, they're physically harmless. If you don't even look at the positive effects of enhancing your imagination, showing you certain realizations and epiphanies, if you just look at potential negatives, there's very, very few potential negatives of psychedelics in a physical way. Maybe mentally, yeah, you could argue that some people shouldn't take it.
Yeah.
It's hard to say in a general sense, but that's also rare. So, it's just people drinking the Kool-Aid. And if you do drink, I was gonna say, if you do drink the ayahuasca, you'll see the ayahuasca Kool-Aid. You will see that it's not what it's cracked up to be from the drug war in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of work to do to switch them over to the ayahuasca Kool-Aid, to the electric Kool-Aid.
Yeah, man.
Because even some otherwise open-minded people are still not convinced. For example, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was banned from the Kundalini subreddit for telling my story, which involved LSD activating a Kundalini awakening, and they were not having it. At least this one mod guy who was real like anal about it. He was like, no drugs, like this is our rule, like
Jeez.
If you had any kind of substance, it wasn't a real Kundalini experience. I'm like, this is so not true, because I had this experience, and it's like, yeah, maybe it was like this temporary thing, but now I have a meditation practice because of it. And if you're closing the door to that, then you're closing the door to anyone who might get there another way. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like not recognizing that there are other ways to get to this thing.
To the way.
Yeah.
Other ways to the way.
And there's these stigmas, like whatever this guy thinks in his head about psychedelics, like we got to find a way to break past that. But at least I'm not going to be able to convince anyone in the Kundalini subreddit anymore.
That's interesting, man. Yeah, sometimes I see there's two camps. There's the yoga people, and then there's the psychedelic people. A truly integrated individual is one that knows the power of both. That's very rare, actually, to find people that are essentially like Ram Dass or like us, that know the utility of both of these ways to embody the way, as I said before. And it's unfortunate for sure, but I don't know. I guess that's not in that person's karma to know that. Yeah, it's like, it's weird. It's just weird to me.
You can't force it either.
No,
you can't like just be like, here's all this information. Like, people need to discover it for themselves.
Yeah,
it's like the classic thing of like when you give someone an idea, and then like a week, and they're like, and then a week later they're like, oh, what if we did this? And it's like the same exact thing you said, but they just needed to feel like they came up with it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's how a lot of these things go, where it's like they need to come to it themselves. We can never force this like understanding on someone else, especially when you're having to unravel all of these like decades of stigmatization and things like that. So you talk to a lot of these kind of people that I'm sure you meet a lot who are both, but like, have you ever been speaking to someone on your podcast and they're like anti-psychedelic? I can't imagine it happens that much, but has that ever happened? No. Or people who maybe just don't do it?
Well, to be honest with you, I know who the person is before I speak to them. So if they are not into the psychedelic camp, I don't even bring it up. Okay. But if they are, that's when I bring it up. So gotcha. I know enough about the person when I speak to them to know how to navigate the conversation. And if I know they're not into it, I'm like, I'm not even going to try. So, yeah, that's to answer your question right there. It's that's like, I think it's just because I know enough about the person to either bring it up or not bring it up.
That's fair. And you talk to so many of these spiritual people, so I'm sure that it's like, it's starting to accumulate. You know, you're hearing all these perspectives, and I've been ramping up my podcast lately, and I get so much joy and satisfaction from like speaking to another person and then genuinely learning something from them, and like and hearing them put something in a way that I've never like connected the dots on. So it starts to add up over time. So like, are there any lessons that you've kind of gained from your guests, or maybe just general things that over time you start to see like a common thread among them, or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I believe one of the most powerful things that you can do is not only psychedelics or meditation, but to spend time with people that know. Spend time with people that have a little bit more wisdom than you, and to be genuinely curious in their presence. And that, to me, has actually, I would say, been more powerful than any psychedelic experience that I've had. More powerful than meditation. To really just sit with somebody that has like just some kind of energy. They call it dharmic transmission in Buddhism. When you sit with a teacher that is realized. And I feel that, interestingly enough, through time and space, in front of a computer screen. And that's how also it reminds me that we're not connected. I'm sorry, we are connected, not through linear time and through locality. We are connected somehow in some kind of formless ether. And just by like syncing up with another person's brain, it allows you to feel that connectivity. Like if you are truly in tune with another person, there's something that is bestowed upon you that goes beyond words. Like even though like somebody's saying words, I feel like they're doing something to me at a kundalini level. Like there's something
Mm.
going on. I can't think of anything specific because I've done so much, to be honest with you, but there's been moments where I'm talking where I'm like, what are they doing? They're doing something. There's something going on right now that I can't quite put my finger on. I can't quite explain, but I know that in their words, it's magic. There's something going on behind the scenes that I can't explain. So yeah, I would recommend to anybody listening, and you, Tyler, spend as much time as you can with people that know. Legitimate people. There's a lot of fakers out there, I'm not going to lie. But if you can find somebody that just has that resonance in their voice, try and spend time with them. And you'll notice that it is extremely helpful and beneficial for your own practice, your own, I don't know, your own sanctity of mind.
Mm.
Find the others.
Yeah. Yes. Dude, I love that so much. And I think what you said really resonates in this idea of resonance, where it's like the fact that when we expose ourselves to someone who's wiser than us or more skilled at us in something that we want to achieve, we tune to that,
Yeah.
where it's like if you surround yourself with people who are like at this level you aspire to, that will become the thing that's like the bar gets set. And
Mm.
we naturally, even without thinking about it, we're like, okay, I need to like kind of rise up, and you do. And this happens on like an ideas level, and this happens on like a subtle energetic level, like what you were saying. Like I haven't thought about that in a long time, but you reminded me that like, yeah, some people I feel like I'm straight up tuning my chakras to them, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
where it's like, especially a heart open person. That's one of the biggest obvious ones that can like turn you on, is like when you are around someone who's so centered in their heart and open in their heart. That's contagious, and
Oh
you
yeah.
feel like, wow, like I need to be open like that in order to like receive that kind of love and to give it back.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny too is there's so many moments in the conversation where I'm with a very compassionate, heart-centered person, and I don't even want to say anything. I just want to sit there, and then I have to come back into on the podcast host. I gotta move this along here. But I
Yeah.
think truly this transmission, as I said before, goes beyond words. You don't really have to say anything. Just sit in the presence with somebody that is very loving, and
Yeah.
it's just like, it's like a hug. It's a nice hug from your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unconditional love. It's the most powerful thing in the world, the most powerful force. It's God, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's like a more practical way, because we always talk about like with these revelations that everything is love. It's become a cliche at this point. It's something we should keep, but like what are the practical ways to bring that into our world? That's something that I guess is a little bit less talked about, and I think what we're saying here is a great practical means to unlocking more love in the world, is to
Yeah.
like seek those out who put out that frequency, put out that
Mm-hmm.
energy, and and try to just get warm next to the fire of that kind
Mm,
of thing, and
yeah.
make that feel like your new normal.
Yeah, and there's plenty of examples too. That's the thing, is we live in a time where there's so many examples of these past beings. First and foremost is Jesus, Buddha, Ram Dass, um, the list goes on, Aurobindo. There's so many examples
Hmm.
that show us the way. So there's no excuse. It's not like, oh, I don't know. If you're listening to this, especially if you listen this long, you most likely already know who to tune into, where to tune into. And then um, once you learn what's right, you just stay on that wavelength. Continually remind yourself. Continually tap back in with these realized beings. They're always there. Buddha's always there. The
Mm.
Bible's always there. So if you like lose your way, it's so easy to come back.
Mm.
That's the thing. It's so easy. So it's like we live in the most momentous time, miraculous times where we have so many examples at our disposal, in our pockets, at our fingertips, that we can tap into to remind us, like, oh, of course it's about love. Of course it's about surrender and yada yada. There's no excuses. That's the thing, is there's no excuses in this lifetime. You can get distracted for sure, doom scroll, go on TikTok and distract yourself all you want, but if you really want it, if you really are earnest enough, there's plenty
Hmm.
of examples. There's plenty of examples out there for you to tune into. And I don't know about you, man, but once I tune into a compassionate, loving being, whether it is in a call or in a book, there's just something that's like, yeah, it's just like a affirmative.
Hmm.
It's a very strong affirmative. I'm like, oh, of course. What was I doing before?
Yeah.
So hallelujah to that we have all of these examples at our disposal.
Yeah, yeah, it makes it easier to get back on track. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be some element of that where so many of the lessons that we learn in life, or even like in a psychedelic experience, is a reminder more
That's
than
it.
just like a first time learning, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I actually knew this, but I just needed to come back to it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a beautiful kind of metaphor or analogy that I learned from Eric Davis, where he did these guided meditations, these online circles during COVID, and I was like super into them. And he follows kind of like a psychedelic Buddhist perspective. So I don't know if you ever like got into Eric Davis, but I think you would resonate with him a lot.
Mm.
That was kind of my exposure to like that kind of Buddhist idea, because I was more into like the Hindu Kundalini type of stuff, but I'm open to whatever. But anyway, he would describe meditation as like a constant adjustment, right? Because
Mm.
it's like, even if you're an experienced meditator, you're still going to need to be like, oh, I'm tensing my shoulders, let me relax them, or like, oh, my spine is kind of like not straightened out, let me like adjust.
Yeah.
It's a constant adjustment, and
Yeah.
life is kind of like that.
That's
it's
good.
like it's like we're always needing to readjust and monitor our center.
Mm.
And even if you get really far along, you're still going to need to, like, it's like we're always walking and standing up. We always need to balance ourselves. We're
Mm-hmm.
never going to not, we're never, now it's never like you just be like, okay, I'm perfectly balanced, I'll never need to like think about standing up straight again. It's like you're always needing to adjust and balance. And I think that's a great way to look at life, kind of in
Yeah.
general.
Amen. It's like tuning a guitar. The
Yeah.
guitar naturally becomes untuned, right? If you don't tune it, you don't play
Yep.
it enough. So you just got to tune yourself in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Regularly tune yourself back into the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. Not literally the
Mm-hmm.
book, but like I see when you are living in the way, you are living in flow. It's like a song. It's a dance, as we said
Mm-hmm.
before. You live in the song and you dance with the song. And there is this flow state for sure. Yeah, it's just about retuning. I like that though, readjustment. Might have to
Mm-hmm.
talk to that guy, Eric Davis.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I'll send you some stuff. He's an author, and so he has a lot of like really good writings and things like that.
Awesome.
And I consider him a indirect mentor. Because I think he might be a little too busy to like mentor me. But I'm always listening to his ideas, and since he publishes his thoughts in writing and newsletter, like I'm getting a lot from him. And then doing these meditations like once a month for like 4 years,
Mm.
and he would like do a talk and then a guided meditation. Like I learned so much from him, and he was great about this middle way of like
Yeah.
holding a contradiction and walking the tightrope in the middle of that.
Mm.
And it's just like it makes so much sense. And like you were saying earlier, whenever you meet a compassionate, open-hearted person, there's that like affirmative thing that you feel. That's how I felt with Eric Davis, where it was like, oh my God, someone that makes a lot of sense. Not just some sense, but like I hear him speak and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is my jam, this resonates.
Yeah.
And there's something about the way I think our brains are all wired so differently that it's like that's going to look differently for a lot of people. Like I straight up think that psychedelics and music have rewired my brain
Mm.
in a way that like I ended up learning that Eric Davis was a musician and he played guitar, and I was like, of course, like that's why like his stuff just like fits into my brain like a pre-made groove. And
Mm.
there was this one time I accidentally took more than a microdose, and it was like I had these little tabs and I would like cut off the corner. And so that was a mistake because they're not always like evenly distributed across the tab. And I like also am not always accurate with like cutting off the corner, like
Mhm.
a small corner. And so I took this tab at like 10 p.m. at my friend's house. And
It was a long night.
well, because I worked the night shift, which is like 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m., right?
Nice.
And so I get to work and I'm like making this tea on like a little portable mini stove. And then I start to feel like the fire from the little mini stove like warm the molecules and like radiate through the air. And I'm like thinking of it in this like crazy trippy way. I'm like, oh, the molecules are radiating out and like touching my hand. I was like, uh-oh, I think we're in some different territory right here. And so I started tripping at work serving tables, bro. And I was like
Wow.
I was like serving, it was like midnight, and so there was like a bunch of people in there, and we got like a rush to like as this was coming on. And I was like serving this table of like a young couple with a bottle of wine, but they were so like engrossed in what they were doing, they weren't paying attention to me. I just like brought them their water and food, and it was fine. And then as soon as that initial rush died at like midnight, it was like totally empty the rest of the night. So I was like spared from like having to deal with like tripping nuts at work. But this is actually leading into where we were a second ago, which is Eric Davis, where I went home after the shift, everything was fine, and I was listening to his podcast that he used to have called Expanding Mind. And when I was listening to him, his voice was like creating synesthesia in my mind the same way that like a song would when you're tripping. And there's something about the musicality of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And he also comes from like an Irish background, like Irish American background. So we're talking the Tim Learys, the Terrence, and there's
The bards.
something musical. Yes, there's something very musical about the Irish bard like lineage, and I think he has that thing. And just the way he spoke, it was like literally music to my ears.
Ooh.
And so I think that's one of the reasons that he resonates with me so much, is that it's like it just fits with my brain, my particular brain.
Yeah. It's a good point, man. I got to use the bathroom really
Go
quick.
for it. Yeah,
I think
go
this is
for
a good point. I'll be right back just because
Sure.
it's a little distracting. Too much tea. Hold on.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, my apologies. Quick
Cool,
intermission,
no.
everybody.
It was good for me to go too.
I try to stay hydrated for these
Yeah.
things, but sometimes it's a little too hydrated.
Right, there's a price to pay for good hydration.
Well, the note we were on was specialized teachers. Like there's
Yeah, so that is actually something I wanted to ask you about. Like,
Mhm.
what is your approach to like teachers? Do you have anyone that you're like trying to mentor directly under, or do you just kind of like listen to all these people you talk to? Like, yeah, what's your approach to mentors and teachers? Because I think it's actually very important, even at
Mm.
like an older age.
I just go with the resonance in their voice. It's hard to explain, but I just know when somebody knows. If you know, you know. And real recognize real kind of attitude. So when I seek people, I can just tell in an instant if they're legitimate or not, or if they're going to impart some wisdom. And I also know the opposite way as well. I know if somebody's faking it. I can tell if they're just parroting others. So yeah, it's nothing that I can truly illuminate other than resonance. It's just resonance in somebody's voice
Mm-hmm.
that I just feel and go with that. So yeah, that's the best I can give you is that I
For
just
sure.
know, I can just hear it in their voice.
For sure. And that's going back to the intuition, right? The intuition knows way more. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're relying on your intuition to tell you, like, if
Truly.
this is right.
Yeah. I mean, the first time that I've ever heard Dharma talks or read the Dharma, which is the truth or the law, you could say it's hard to translate. That's one of those Sanskrit words that it's hard to translate. It doesn't really have a direct English translation, but you could say the law, the truth. The first time that I heard Dharma talks, it was just something different. I'm like, they're using words that I've heard before, but it's like almost in the formulation of their words. It's the conviction in their words that hit me differently. Because I was a pragmatic atheist, all about science and proofs and rationale and logic. But when I heard the Dharma, there was something where I'm like, I don't need to know the science of this. I don't need to know this from a logical standpoint. It just hit me in a place that was foreign, it seemed. Hit me in the heart. Before I was all mind. But when you truly read or listen to the words of somebody that knows, there is a transmission that goes into the part of your being that transcends the mind. It goes into your heart. It really does. It goes into that intuitive space. Like from where your intuition comes from, another person can transmit that from their own intuitive heart space into yours. It's almost like a radio signal,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's
Yeah.
like unlike anything I've ever heard before when I first started to get into it. And currently still, like when I listen to the Dharma, like I said, I just know.
Mm-hmm.
I just know, and there is just like, ah, it's the
Yeah.
apparentness in the words.
It's vibratory. Like
Yeah.
what we've been talking about the last few times we've talked is about the power of vibes and how
Mm-hmm.
it skips that logical interpretive level where you have
Yeah.
to, like, what does this mean? You pick it apart. A
Yep.
lot of logic is about disassembling things into their constituent parts
Yeah. Right.
and seeing how it all fits together, which is very valuable, but it's not everything. And
No.
and I think this vibratory kind of thing skips that level and goes straight to your heart. I think that might be what is happening here is a vibe.
It's the vibes. The vibes
Yeah.
don't lie.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. So, like, when it comes to teachers, I think we should talk about the GOAT, Ram Dass.
Mm-hmm.
So I am kind of an outsider on this because I like him, I respect him, but I never was like a student of his in the same way that a lot of psychonauts are. Because,
Mm.
almost every other psychonaut I know had like a moment where they like got Be Here Now. And they got all into Ram Dass. Like I know Alex and Allison Gray did that. A lot of my personal friends, but I
Mm-hmm.
never really did. I was more of like a Tim Leary guy, and they had this funny kind of like rivalry, I guess you could say, not like antagonistic, but where they were like, I don't know if I'm like digging that. They were on
Yep.
their own trips, you could say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so I would like to hear like your thoughts on him and like what makes him resonate with you, and yeah, and just how and we can go into history buff mode too with this too, like the history of the 60s and how he's kind of influenced the psychedelic world.
Mm-hmm. So it's very fascinating because I was also a Tim Leary guy,
Mm.
and I didn't think the whole Ram Dass shtick was real. I was like, what is this guy? It's Richard Alpert. Why does he call himself Ram Dass?
Mhm.
But I think a definitive moment when somebody gets Ram Dass is when he goes from In Your Mind to Richard Alpert to Ram Dass. And that journey is, it's hard to describe, but I'll try it here. You have to understand his story with his guru. You have to understand his story with Neem Karoli Baba. So it's like it's very similar to the stories of the Bible. So the Bible is written by witnesses or testaments of Jesus. They were like, yo, this guy was doing some magic. He was doing some miracles. We're going to write it down of a very high being, right? It was a testament to the high being. Ram Dass is the testament to Neem Karoli Baba. So you have to understand the power, not only of Ram Dass, but his story and the dharmic transmission that he got from Neem Karoli Baba. He is his disciple. So once you can understand the history a little bit, understand the story from a pragmatic way, his relationship to his guru, then it starts to make a little more sense. Then the words resonate a little bit more because he was a witness to the miracles that Neem Karoli Baba was doing. Like, if you don't know the magic that Neem Karoli Baba instilled into the world and into Ram Dass, then it's not going to really make sense. Like, you have to, they're one being. You have to know him and his master. If you just know Ram Dass, it's going to be like, who is, he's some white guy calling himself some Indian name. Like, what is this? But you have to understand, he was the witness to this very high being to show us what's possible. And what's possible is truly magic, as we spoke of a little bit before. But the things that Neem Karoli Baba did define the laws of physics. And you have to have a little bit of faith that Ram Dass was telling the truth. And I do believe fully he was telling the truth. So why would he make it up? You have to read the Miracle of Love book. It's a whole book on his miracles with other disciples and other people that were in Neem Karoli Baba's life. And the more you get into his story and his relationship, it's like, there's no way he's making this stuff up. Why would he make it up? There's no, like, he's already has money. Like, Ram Dass comes from an affluent family. He doesn't even care about money. So he's just doing this to spread the good word out of love. So, moral of the story is, if anybody's a little bit skeptical of Ram Dass, get more into what his relationship was like and why he revered Neem Karoli Baba so much. Because this being was a very high being. And the fact that he lived in, what was it, the 50s, 40s, 60s, whatever it was, with us on this earth, we have photos of him, is truly miraculous. And it's a testament to all of us that this is possible because he was a human being. Just as Jesus was, just as the Buddha was, Neem Karoli Baba was a human being and a very, very high being that is able to, like I said, bend space-time somehow and read minds and do these crazy, crazy things. So it imparts faith. Like, if you know the story of Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba, it imparts faith because it's like, there's no way he would lie. And that's touching upon the faith of Christians, right? You might be like, oh, it's a book written 2,000 years ago. But if you go into with the same attitude, saying like, well, why would they lie? Why would these 12 disciples lie about this and write it in a book, risk their lives, which they all were killed? Why would they write this down and put their lives at risk? It's because it was real. Because Jesus was real. I mean, you don't have to believe that. I'm not saying that. But in the same attitude of like Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba, he was real. What he was doing was 100% real. And they were human. So that's, you understand what I'm saying? It's like they're providing proof that these higher states of consciousness, psychic abilities and things of that nature are 100% attainable for all of us. And there's people on earth, very few, but there's people on earth that have tread that path. And there's testaments to them. And Ram Dass is one of them.
Nice. Okay, I've heard a little bit about his teacher. And is that the same one where he like gave him LSD and he was like,
Yep.
That's it?
Yep, exactly. It's Maharaji, he calls him, which just means great king in Sanskrit. But his real name, Neem Karoli Baba. So I would implore you to get more into his story and his relationship. And you might start to find faith. You might start to find what faith really means.
Fascinating, man. Yeah, I watched your podcast with Zach Leary, Tim Leary's son, which is funny how we're talking about like, oh yeah, I'm a Tim Leary guy, and like Tim Leary's son is a Ram Dass guy.
Yeah, of course. He was one
Uh,
of his like students. He was always
right,
around Ram Dass.
right.
So there's
So
something to that as well.
I found that that was something you guys were like bonding over. Is like this
Oh, that's the thing.
appreciation.
Is
Yeah.
like if you come into another person that recognizes Ram Dass, it's like you already love each other. It's hard to explain.
Mm,
It might sound a little strange, but it's like if you know this person's into Ram Dass and they know you're into Ram Dass, it's an automatic relationship. It's quite hard to explain, but it's because you both know something. You know the story. You have to know the story. I think I already said that, but you have to know the story between these two because it's a religious story. I do believe in thousands of years from now, we'll look at this story of Ram Dass just like we look at the Bible. I know that's a bold statement, but
yeah.
it's something akin to that at least.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've talked to a bunch of people. Like, is there anyone, I guess, modern day that you feel like is kind of doing this type of thing?
Mm,
Or is it like every few hundred years someone pops up?
yeah, I believe it's very, very, very rare. There's
Mm.
obviously levels to it, and
Yeah.
there's some people that touch upon it more than others. As in, there's sometimes I feel like people are reading my mind when I talk to them. I feel that, but I think like truly, truly high beings, like avatars, prophets, very few and far between. And in the
Mm.
age that we're in, I don't even know if they're incarnating anymore, to be honest. And that might be a whole esoteric, very deep rabbit hole. But I think the age of Aquarius that we are in, and with the interconnectivity of each other and the internet, it's like I don't think those beings are here anymore. They came before. Um, they lived their life. We have their examples in recording, documented, and that's all we need. I don't think those beings need to incarnate anymore as bodhisattva beings, which just means somebody that comes back to free the others. I think they did their work, and that's it. I think
Mm.
we don't need them anymore because we have plenty of examples. It's like we have these examples. What more do we need?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't think they're on TikTok.
Right.
I
Like
don't know.
even because like the Dalai Lama is like a big spiritual person, and they find a Tibetan boy
Yep.
who they deem is the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, and the new one, he's like this kid in Minnesota watching soccer, or like going to school. He's like learning all of this Dalai Lama type stuff, but he's just like a kid in modern life. So there's an interesting dynamic there of like, yeah, it's like we're making it less uh like prone for people like that to even lead that kind of existence.
Mm, that's
Because even
interesting.
in
I
the
didn't know that.
60s, yeah, man, yeah, you should look into it. The reincarnation of the Dalai Lama is like a teenage boy in Minnesota. He's Tibetan. He's Tibetan, but
Wow.
yeah, he's like just some kid. And yeah, imagine the pressure that comes with that. Like
Yeah, I don't even know if that's right because there's one part of me that is faithful in the Tuku process because there's many other people that they find the reincarnations of the Tukus. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, that I believe in reincarnation. But then there's another part of me, maybe that's the logical part of me. It's like, well, how do they really know?
mm-hmm.
I don't, I don't know what to believe in that way. There's a dichotomy in me where I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't even think
okay
it
to never
matters.
know. Yeah, it's okay to never really know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Don't think about it too much. I don't think
Um,
it really matters. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. As long as there's like a benefit that can come to people, because like the Dalai Lama we have now, he has plenty of great wisdom that he's shared because of this. Even if it is some kind of mythological fairy tale of like reincarnation, like it actually created this person who is a very wise, compassionate being,
Yeah.
and he's done good in the world. So it's like that can't hurt, right?
Yeah, exactly. Other than the person that doesn't even want to be the Dalai Lama, but they have to be
Right.
because they were told to be from birth.
Right. Right. Yeah. So there is kind of a problem with that, but I
Who knows?
mean, yeah, you might grow into those shoes.
It's hard to
So
say. But yeah,
Um,
touching upon that last
yeah,
point, there are great beings here. There are tulkus, but the beings that can perform miracles in that way, I feel like are another level. Like there are very, I'm not saying there aren't great beings incarnating anymore or reincarnating, but there's something about these specific beings that we talk about. The ones that have religions all around them, ones that don't even make YouTube videos, don't write anything down. People write down things about them that is very special that I don't even know if we have anymore, to be
mm,
honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, for sure. And I'm not saying there aren't great beings, but then there's levels in the pyramid
true.
of
Yeah.
great beings. And the ones that are at the top, I don't even know. I don't know if they're here anymore, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I don't know. That's just what's
Mm,
coming up in the moment. I could be wrong.
yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to think about too, because like it's not something that we really have in America. It's something that comes from this other religion or this other area that we don't really have. Like reincarnation is not a part of Christianity. Um,
Well,
you know,
some may argue it is if you know how to read it in the right way. But yeah, classically,
yeah,
fundamental
right.
Christianity,
Or
no
at
way.
least not for everybody. At least maybe
Hmm.
maybe Jesus gets it, but
Yeah, that's a different kind of reincarnation,
right, right.
resurrection. But
So
exactly, maybe that's what he was alluding to. Sorry, I didn't
mm,
want to interrupt you. I know you're
no,
probably trying
you're
to say
good.
something.
You're good. We're just riffing here. You know what's funny, man? I normally I'll go and make like a long list of bullet points for my guests, but like with you, I've talked to you so much that I was like, I trust that we can just go with the flow. I did have a couple of points written down that we did already get to, but yeah, I knew we would just be able to like just jump in and just
Hmm.
like talk and vibe and riff and so yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. It's
Same,
always fun to talk to you.
for sure. Well, you're an awesome guy. I think we just are on similar wavelengths. So that's why we can easily just talk about this stuff. It's authentic, it's organic. You know, we don't have to force anything. We're literally just two human beings that like each other and we're just talking. It's
Yeah,
as simple as that. Like we'd have this
yeah,
conversation if there was no camera, there was no
exactly,
microphone. We'd just
exactly.
have this naturally.
Right, which is I think why we're actually doing stuff like this, because it's like this is just what we would do anyway, so might
Yeah,
as well like capture it, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know as we land the plane, do you think enlightenment is possible for some people like us, and are you seeking it? Is that some kind of end goal, or is it something? What's your relationship to that idea?
You're gonna end it with that one? Well, to summarize it, if you are seeking enlightenment, you're missing the point. I don't know what else to say to that.
mm,
There has to be, ironically, a ceasing of the seeking in order
yeah.
for there to be true enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
a ceasing of the seeker. Remember, I said you can't be attached to be unattached? That's kind of the gist of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line to toe,
Yeah.
but I guess in one way I can say yes, I am seeking it, but in another way I can say no, ultimately. It's like you have to tread the path in order to come to the end, the destination per se, to realize that there is no path,
Mm.
that there was no need for seeking in the first place. So it may seem like a contradiction and a paradox, and that's because it is.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's alchemy, bro.
Mm,
Alchemy is all about uniting the paradox. You
that's
know,
good.
the final result is supposed to be like a hermaphrodite of like the union of female and male.
Yeah.
And you can think of that as like a yin and yang. And this idea pops up all the time where it's like light and dark, black and white, good and evil. And the yin and yang symbol is a great representation for this. So it is a fine line to toe. It's like we're walking on the little middle part of the yin and yang symbol. We're
Yep.
just like ooh, just trying to stay in balance. And yeah, I think it takes some level of humility, curiosity, and compassion for yourself and others. And even if you get like 1% enlightened, the world is a better place for it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonderful stuff, man. This
Yeah.
was an awesome talk.
Yeah, man. So I'm glad I could finally get you on my channel, and I appreciate you, like always being the homie and reaching out and like hopping in on the live streams. That's
For
really
sure.
cool. Yeah, I think it was cool too to like have you on those couple of times, because
Hmm.
like for some people it can be a little more nerve wracking because they're not used to like talking and it being like broadcasted in any way,
Yeah.
which it does take some getting used to, right? But I
Yep.
think the approach that we were talking about is like what you eventually come to, where it's like, no, you're just genuinely having a conversation, and it just so happens that the cameras are rolling, and
Yeah,
the
exactly.
best times are when you forget about that. But now I'm looking down and I see the little record thing is on. We've been talking for an hour and a half, and it's like I kind of forgot about that, but that's
Yeah.
so I think it's great whenever you hop on too, because it's like we can kind of like keep the flow going of people who are kind of more used to the recording, and it was cool. It was cool. I think
Amen.
and you embody the approach too of like finding the others. You have it in like a spiritual kind of seeker sense, and then for me it's more like a psychonaut, but I think that also is what you're doing as well. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
like two different like flavors, I guess, but there
Hmm.
is so much overlap.
Yeah.
And I love like hearing your perspective too, because like I don't think I follow the spiritual side of like the psychedelic path as much, but it's always been there, and it's always
Hmm.
been like part of it.
Hmm.
So it's just like a matter of like how we orient ourselves to that. Um,
Exactly.
so
Hmm.
yeah, always great to talk to you, man.
Appreciate you, man. Wonderful times, wonderful talk, and I appreciate the reminder. I think every valid teaching is a reminder. That's
Yeah,
what I like to say, at least. So I appreciate the reminder today and the teaching that you brought to me to be here now, essentially. But yeah,
awesome, man.
thank you.
Yes,
Peace
thank
and love.
you. Peace.